Malolele, and welcome everyone to another live digital kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. It's definitely been a busy couple days. Just drove over 1,000 miles the last couple days, Mr.
Ooh,
Aotearoa. Went to go visit some family, had a great time, and just got home a couple hours ago. No rest for the weary, man, or the wicked, whichever you want to go. So straight from the road to a live digital kava session, you know?
brave. Yes, I give you. You're very brave, Tua. Because me, I've always has this. I always have this thing, especially because I know you were traveling in Utah, but traveling during the time of the cold is always a little, challenging. But you said like the cold is not too bad in Utah at the moment, huh? So
Yeah,
driving was relatively
actually,
easy.
it was almost the same temperature as Las Vegas in the 60s for a couple of the days we were there. No
Mm.
snow on the ground. There was a little bit of rain, nothing crazy.
Oh,
And it was just really good to go up there, see family and some friends, and did a couple pit stops. But always good to be back in the
nice.
entertainment capital of the world. How are what you been up to, Mr. Atero?
Um, it's Christmas Eve here. Merry Christmas to all our viewers. Preparing for the Christmas day, but it's Christmas Eve here in Aotearoa. Nothing too much. I just did some working on some work stuff, but I was working from home, so I just thought I would just not use too many of my leave, but just kind of work from home, so that's not too bad. But everything is going well. It's nice and hot summertime here in our side of the world, Tua. So
Mm,
can't complain. This is the kind of Christmas that I'm used to. Being in Tonga and Hawaii, this is the
green
Christmas
Christmas.
I'm used to. Yes, this is the Christmas I'm used to. But everything is going well. Can't complain, Tua.
Awesome. Well, there's a couple housekeeping items I want to get to. We couple things to mention. We are
Yeah.
very appreciative of our paying members of the YouTube channel. That
Mm.
is something that we really appreciate, and that continues to grow. And we've been working hard to find ways to kind of reward or give some privileges to our paying members on the YouTube channel. Some of you may have noticed that a week or two ago we uploaded an interview that we had with Jay Fitzemanu, and we first made that available to the paying members of the channel. We did that
Mm.
before we released it. We'll always release it for free. Hey Ray, appreciate it.
What's up, Ray?
So we really appreciate those who are paying members on the channel and recognize that it's a sacrifice, right? Must I mean money
Yes.
doesn't grow on trees. Money, money doesn't grow on trees. Hey, appreciate it, Megan. Megan says she will subscribe and like. We'll take that.
Hi, Megan.
So
Thank you for your support.
appreciate that. We also have Charlie. Howdy, y'all from the cold Maryland. Ah, yes.
Oh,
Her
snap.
snap. Yeah.
Oh,
Been
snap.
that's it's, cold,
Welcome.
cold weather
Welcome.
over there. Welcome.
Yeah.
But we just uploaded for Megan. You'll really like the part one of an interview that we just did with David Burley. Very exciting interview.
And that's
Very
only for our
exciting interview.
members, Hetua, right?
Yes. Well, I uploaded it now. It's just for the members. We'll eventually release it for free, but we're trying to,
They
show
get
some
first dibs.
gratitude, give some
Yes.
gratitude to the paying members so that they get some value out of it, something a little special, small way we can recognize them. And also, as always, if you want to throw in a digital kava bag to the live digital kava session, do so with the super chats. And we make an effort to add you and recognize your comments when you come through with those super chats, and then also, as a paying member. So that's something that's really important. And as always, a like, a subscribe, and a share goes
Yep.
a very long way in helping us to grow. Fantastic growth in
Yes.
2025.
Yes.
I think we are on track to be well over 2.5 million views across all of our social media platforms.
Awesome.
So once again, like right here, Mel, a paying member of the channel,
Follow.
you get the little that little icon next to your name if you're a paying member. And Mel, we think you might enjoy the members only video that we just uploaded. So really appreciate your support there, Mel. Thank you. Uh we have an interesting program for today. Um, we've been working very hard the last couple of episodes, Masi, to try and get to some social media comments, right? We've
Yes,
been
been a
working
minute. It's
hard.
been a minute. Yeah.
Yes. And, it's always coming in where it's either a little too late or whatever. We haven't been able to get to social media comments, but we are going to do two things today.
What's up?
100% questions from people on the live. So if there's a
Okay.
question or a topic that you guys want to bring up, please bring that up. If you want to make sure it gets recognized, use the super chat. And we're going to rely on those who are joining us live. And then we will also look at the social media commentary. So really do appreciate that. Anything on your mind, Masi, while I look up the first set of comments to walk through.
No, I just want to say, for this live digital kava session on the Polynesianized podcast, that we are coming to you guys on YouTube, Facebook, X, Patreon, and Instagram. So please, if you guys are watching this live digital kava session, put your questions here so we can respond, because I think that's what we're gonna just focus today, kind of wrap up the year of pretty much. Is this our last live digital cover session tour for the year 2025?
Probably, probably
Okay,
this will be the closeout for the year.
okay,
The holidays are coming up. People will be busy, so this
yeah,
is gonna be our last live digital kava session for the year.
yeah. So yeah,
All right, let's start with YouTube. We'll start with YouTube. We'll jump between YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. So let's jump to YouTube first here, real quick. In the wrong thing there. Share. All right. All right. Let's. Can you see that, Masi?
it's still loading on my side. I'm not seeing anything at the moment. It's still having the loading signal.
Okay. Still
All
not
right, I
seeing
see
it.
it. Nope, I see it. It's come up.
All
The
right.
comments.
Let's see here. Let's find a couple interesting comments here. Let's bring this one up here. If you could read this one, Masi, I'll highlight it for you. See if that helps. Can you read that?
Oh, yep. All right, this is from what is it? None of your business. This is on the YouTube comments. No Tuitonga held the title of Tui Manua. LOL. They're basing the beliefs off of Xiaoxi Ilayu's recounting of Neil Gunson's statement about the intermarriages with Samoan chiefly households. Ilayu does not have the clearance for information like that, nor has he ever been to Manua. Tua, share your thoughts.
Yeah, so this is coming out of oral history, and according to Xiaoxi Ilayu, who has been to Samoa many times and has done research in Samoa on these things, he says that there is oral history in Samoa that the Tuitonga at various times also took on the Tuimanua, and so he bases that off of something little interesting, which I didn't know. He says about 60% of the Tuimanuas were females who held the title.
Not surprised. I'm not
So
surprised
and
because
so that just makes it highly probable that you would marry into a male line outside of Samoa that could bring in, like the Tuitonga. And the other thing is, I don't know what he means by he does not have the clearance for that information. I really don't know what that means. As is he saying he doesn't have access or right to that information, but regardless of that, it doesn't really make sense to me. And honestly, we would love to have someone come on and show us what the truth is. Tell us
Please,
what
yes,
the
we've been
purpose is,
yes,
and how it is how it is that they are confident that the Tuitonga never held the Tuimanua title. So that's
correct.
kind of my
No,
2 cents there, Mr. Ateroa.
no, exactly too. I think you've mentioned with that open invitation. I think we've always maintained that open invitation. So now to cut someone to speak on the Tui Manua, and even because I know a lot of the saying goes it's sacred or they're not supposed to share, and I think that's why it doesn't have clearance. Because I'm thinking it's they kind of that's kind of seems the sentiment of many feedbacks that a lot of people say that it's Manua sacred, that no one really kind of shares it. But I think I'm just being open and honest. Just it's okay to say that you don't know or no one really knows about it, and maybe you know because like what you mentioned to if it makes sense, maybe people don't really know because if it's always been mostly with the female side, and then a lot of the intermarriages, and then a lot of that maybe oral history has kind of been gone, and then with the whole what since America has colonized the Manua Islands, and then that loss of generation of oral history has probably been lost in that transition to now. So maybe I'm just thinking probably that's the in my opinion, since no one is is really kind of sharing it, and maybe the real reason is maybe that knowledge is no longer there. I don't know. I'm just saying because that's kind of seems to me the sentiments of the Tuimanua people who believe that the Tuimanua was much older and first,
Uh huh.
and maybe it's because that's the story, but they don't know how many they were there and really the whole how it was kind of passed down because it's been lost. That's what I'm thinking since
Yeah.
the colonization.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the biggest challenges we have with people who share that position is when we ask for more information, they either say, "Oh, it's super secretive," or "It's so old that no, that's why we can't find any ruins,"
They
and
don't know. That's
and
the
they
truth.
don't know, right? And I think this same person said, what's your evidence for saying that Datu Imanu is younger? I think we've pretty much covered that very, very extensively. The
Yeah,
archaeological evidence, because people always say is, oh, nobody has done anything on the ruins in Manua, and we're like, actually, there's been
yeah,
quite a bit of work done in the Manua Islands and in those ruins. And the data has come back and they said Tu'i Manua is 500 years old. That's it, according to
yeah,
the archaeological evidence that they found. And unfortunately, this is where the certain weaknesses of oral history is exposed. They even said that the oral history that these there were these burial sites that were close to the Tu'imanua ruins or residence because these were loyal subjects of the Tu'imanua and they wanted to be buried next to them. Well, guess what happened when they went and did the excavation? Not only did they not find any bodies in these, you know, burial locations for the Tu'imanua's loyalist subjects, but they found out they were just Ufi pits. These were just
yeah,
pits where they stored Ufi. So once again, very difficult to take these types of comments seriously. Um, and so, I mean, we're not saying that oral history doesn't have value. What we're saying is not all oral histories are created equally. And actually, the source and the origin of the oral history makes a big, big difference. Um,
mhm.
so, yeah.
No, awesome.
Okay. For one thing here is I can't really get the Facebook one here to load the way I want. So I'm just going to read it off my phone. For some
Okay,
reason, I can read the comments better off of, or questions and slash comments better off my phone. Let's see. Here's another comment here that so the video was titled Did the Tuitonga rule over the Tuimanua? Right?
hmm
And it says We didn't call the Tu'i Manua the Great Manua or Manuatele for no reason. Before the rise of the great familial titles of Savai Upolu and Tongatapu, Tu'imanua and Nafanua are central figures in Samoan oral tradition. First stated in our chiefly salutation, the Fa'alupenga, o paia o Samoa e amata mai i le tai sama-sama o le tuimanua, se I paia le tai ula-ula o le nafanua. Hopefully I made that enough muscle
Yeah,
you could
you did.
understand
You
that.
yeah, yeah. You did good.
The sacredness of Samoa begins with the Yellow Sea of the Tu'imanua reaching the Red Sea of the Nafanua. The Tu'imanua story is honored for his enduring leadership and his legacy lives on. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Manu Atele just either to me, it's just a when he says they use the word Manu Atele, it's either it can mean many manuas or it can mean a big manua. So I mean that can be just translated just within Manua, just the Manua Islands, and that's just their reference to that. But it's not even close to like what you said to it. We already look at the archaeological evidence. That's one data point we looked into. It seems to be only 500 years old, and then a lot of the oral histories that we did hear about the Tui Manua is including that the Tui Manua was a close relative of the Tui Tonga that stayed in the Tui Manua area in the islands, and then also the other some oral history of I think there was a narrative that the Tui Manua is the conqueror or like giving the name Ha'amoa or Samoa, the clan of Moa, to be in that the Samoan archipelago for right now. But that's kind of where the whole Ha'amoa kind of comes from. But the thing is there's no evidence that's saying regarding titles that it's as long as the Tuitonga title holders. I mean, we actually have burial grounds of where the Tuitongas were were recorded, and there could be some that were missed. But if the Tui Manua was that great, there's no, like I said, there's no ruins, some ancient ruins to reflect the political, the religious, and the civilization that Manua was a important figure in all of Polynesia. I'm not saying that this Tui Manua was not important just within maybe Ha'amoa's history, but regarding Polynesia, it seems to be just within Manua. Tuitonga's history, there's no argument with its ruins in Futuna. Was it Futuna and Uvea with its ruins in Savai, and also even the place called we talked about this with Pitisemanu, the Saina, which has the Fa'alupenga that is talking about the lower rank of the
Ha'atagalawa.
Tuito Tagalawa, right? So and then not only that, then you also add the the other places like in the Cook Islands that have a lot of reference to the ruins
Tongan
that who
ruins
built them.
there. Yeah.
Tongan ruins there. So I'm like, it's almost like no comparison. There's no ruins of Tumunoa. The only recordings that people have are saying it's in songs or it's in some of their oratory thing. But we all know that changes, and it's only within that little scope as a reference. That could be something that maybe we don't translate. But to me, if it's only in oral, it doesn't exist. Take for example Egypt, right? There's no debate how powerful the pharaohs of the ancient civilization, because there's many ruins. Tonga is the Egypt in the Polynesia. You can't argue with the Ha'amonga Amaui, the Sun Gate in Tonga. You can't argue with the Langi burial mounds, and you can't argue with refound new land of 100 acres. Like you don't find that anywhere in Polynesia. It's the same thing with Egypt. No one's going to debate if Egypt was an ancient civilization and powerful in the world civilization of that time because you just look at the ruins. It's to me that's case closed. I mean, it's not even a debate. So we can go on the little details of the Manuatele. He's referencing that Manuatele. We wouldn't call it the Manuatele in our oratory um, speeches that we do. Is like, well, maybe in Upolu and Savai and Tutuila and the Manua, and that's about it. But it's not as powerful compared your oral history of saying Manuatele compared to the ruin of the Haamonga Amawi or the Langi actual Langi structures in Mua. So that's just me there, Tua. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps for people to decipher kind of between the difference between what I'm sharing and what our that comment is. But I don't know if you had anything else to maybe add on or a different perspective.
No, just want to add, want to recognize our paying members. And this is Mel. She says oral narratives are great, but sometimes it gets retold, added into genealogy, sharing that becomes standardized as part of history, but not tied to original stories of remembrance. And that's one of the things that I think is really important that Mel here is sharing is these stories can morph sometimes, right? And
Mm,
we had these discussions. We have identified that propaganda is not a
mm,
modern thing, right? Propaganda has always existed, and that's one of the challenges of oral history is and even with written history, we have propaganda in written history. Just look at the day and age we live in now, right?
yeah,
It's just history in general on how you interpret how it's being used. And we kind of jokingly say, you know, our brothers and sisters in Hamoa are somewhat famous for this. This is why they have courts for oral history, right? We covered a study that looked at several oral histories in Hamoa where they showed examples of, how, of people making up an oral history to try and position not themselves, but one or
mm,
two generations down the road to lay claim onto land or to title. And so that's one thing that I think we need to consider right there, and appreciate that comment, Mel, and thank you for your support. What I
hmm
wanted to share was there is, even in Hamoa, you can't say the Manua Atele, it was this great thing, and you couldn't even unite Western Samoa for a
true,
consistent amount of time. And in fact, the oral history is much stronger that Upolu and Savai'i resisted Datu Imanua and that there was tension there for the longest amount of time. So you can't come here and tell us, oh, the Manua Tele was so great, it was so influential, and yet it couldn't even take care of the closest islands right next to it. That is something that I think is really important that needs to be taken into account. Then, like you're
yeah,
saying, Mussy, the ruins, the data. I hate. I hate to break it, but there is little to no evidence. The best that can be told about the Tu'i Manua is a story. But you know what's the problem with the story?
mm,
You just come up with another story and then you're on equal grounds. You can't just say, believe the story of the Tu'i Manua, and then when we say, well, here's a story about the Tu'itonga, and then say, well, we have to disregard your story just because it's a story. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. A story, it's a he said, she said. Okay, that's one spot. The next one is, well, let's bring physical evidence. Well, that's where the ruins, like you said,
mm,
becomes very, very important. And then we've even looked at the ruins in Ha'amoa, and there is a high probability that those ruins are tied to
correct.
Tongan leadership, right? Like the Pulemele. We listened to interviews of the locals in Hamon. And they're like, we've never heard the word Pulemele. But you know what our ancestors have told us for forever? That this was the Paatonga and it was built for the time of the Tuitonga and
Correct.
and so forth. And they said, the chief, they named the chief that lived there. And then we find out in an interview that that is a descendant of one of the Tuitonga. So it would make sense when the
Mm,
Tuitonga goes back to Tonga, when they relocate the capital of the empire back to Tonga, they would put a descendant or a relative
Correct.
to be in charge of that land, which is what happened in Hamoa. So it's it's really hard to accept. Oh, the Manua Tele they came just because it said that doesn't mean it was true, and it's very challenging just to take it at story level. Brown Monk, good to see
Hey,
you,
what's up?
Topo.
What's up? What's
Appreciate
up,
it.
Brown Mug?
So we're gonna go to this one, Mr. Ateroa. Let me
All
know
right.
if you can read this one.
All right. It's from, is it TikTok Tua? Is this from
Yeah, this
TikTok?
one's from TikTok.
Okay. So it is from It Is What It Is. The Tuitonga was welcome to Samoa since way back because we're united through Tuimanua. So we're basically family until one Tuitonga got rowdy and wanted to rule Samoa like he does Tonga. He got his ass whooped by one or two or three villages in Upolu. LOL, that's all we needed. LOL. If Samoa was to ride under one banner like a king, we would have destroyed Tuitonga line for good. LOL facts. It took one tribe called Ama to come and establish the Kanokpolu king line in Tonga. LOL. One tribe, ladies and gentlemen. If we wanted war, it would be Tuimanua all over again. LOL. Be humble, Tonga. Don't be silly now. Be humble. Tua, what's your thoughts?
Interesting. Okay, there's a couple things under this position. First off, he says that he's giving the impression that the Tuitonga comes from the Tuimanua and Tangaloa, right? We've shared that even in the oral history in the Niwas,
Yeah,
Popua never went to Haamoa. She went to Tongatapu because that's where Tangaloa resided. So there's
correct.
that part, right? And so we do agree we're related, right?
Yes, we agree with
Talakai
that.
Faike, we learned from Fitsemanu that the village that Talakai Faike was at was his mother's village, and that's where he was at, and he was living there. And we challenge a couple things. We challenge the idea that Tatu Itonga invaded Haamoa for 400 years. We don't believe that. We go
Yeah,
further and back. There is no Tonga and no Haamoa. It was all Tuitonga
just
Empire.
Tuitonga, pretty
And then
much.
yes, this idea that there was a national identity of Haamoa that really didn't exist. That is 100% a identity and a reality born from colonization.
Mm,
Samoa gets colonized, it starts to develop its own identity as a quote unquote somewhat independent nation and groupings in isolation. So we do challenge that, but I do agree that he said just three villages, one to
yeah,
three villages. We agree with that to the fact that it wasn't a war, right? That's
yeah,
there is there is little evidence that this was a full blown war, and the evidence is actually overwhelming. It was a little scuffle
yeah,
one time, and it is even evident with the name that is restored or the saying, the statement of the Tuitonga, where he says, Maria Toa, Maria Tau. He says, and when I come back, he doesn't say he's kicked out. He says, I'm coming back because this is all under the Tuitonga. This is all under Tuitonga domain. You're not kicking me out. You've kind of rebelled. I actually found it entertaining, and
yeah,
I'm actually give you props. But when I come back, I am not going to come back to war or to fight. And that is actually, I didn't know this, but that's where the Sa. I was driving in Haamoa, driving down the road, and then everybody came out in the evening, was standing
yeah.
on the sides of the road in Haamoa. I found out later that that originates from because they were concerned that the Tuitonga still might return
Might retaliate or
and
something.
attack or retaliate. That's what the Sa was kind of instituted for, and it took on a different purpose now for religious purposes. So there's that thing, and the other thing is I'll leave it to you, Masi, to answer his. Oh, the Ha'amoa people came to Ha'amoa and established the Tu'ikanukupolu and that whole thing. I'll let you answer that latter half. But before we go there,
Okay.
Devita, Malo Alpito, digital
Oh,
kava bag, appreciate it.
malo
Really appreciate
maukava,
it.
Tevita. Malo.
Malo Alcava Tevita, appreciate it for that super chat. And his comment, his latest comment was, I'll read it to you, Mr. Atearoa. Kaulufonua Fekai took on the name Tu'imanua. Could that be where they've made the mistake towards the empires? Because technically, Tu'imanua does have an empire, but through Kaulufonua Fekai, the Tu'itonga. Thoughts there,
Correct.
Mr. Atearoa?
No, and that I think Tevita, you brought up a good point, and that's the idea Xiaoxi Eliu kind of mentioned, where he kind of had two titles because one of the Tuitongas, I forgot which name, or you say is it Garufunua Fekai. He also his mother
Yeah,
was from Manua, and and it's to me it makes sense if the women took the title to Manua because it's actually has happened in Ha'amoa. So to me, eh, that's he inherited that title, but because he inherited that title, you could say there was the Tuitonga, the Tuimanua Empire was through because of the Tuitonga title, and it's the same thing what Tonga uses now. Um, the Crown Prince of Tonga. Usually, when you're Crown Prince, they take up the name. I know Tupo the Fourth had the Tungi title. Tupo Toa is kind of the other one, and then once they became the King of Tonga, then they just take the title of Tupo or the Tuikangupolu title, and that becomes it changes, right? Because you're taking the title that is recognized throughout Polynesia and to the world in what we understand now. So Tuitonga was the most recognized title in all of Polynesia. So he took that title and that's what he used. But probably before he was Tuitonga, he took on the title Tuitonga title. He probably used the Tuimanua, as maybe that was the probably the second prestigious, you know,
especially in
prestigious,
Ha'amoa. Yeah,
especially in Ha'amoa. If that's if they say the beginning, like what our earlier comment said, the beginning of Ha'amoa was from the Tuimanua, then yeah, he used that. But it's like anybody now. It's if I had the Manua and the Tuitonga, and if, even the Samoans, because of the how recognizable the Tuitonga title is and the oral history just within Ha'amoa, they would take the Tuitonga title over the Tuimanua, no doubt. There's no doubt. That's how it goes, and that's where I see your point, Devita, with the Tuimanua had an empire through Kaurufonua Fekai because he had also the Tuitonga title. So that's my kind of explanation there, Devita. Tua, I don't know if you had any, maybe a different angle or maybe any
no,
add-ons.
to me, this is what makes the most amount of sense. If we were to say how, if we have two things that contradict each other, Tuitonga says I was the ultimate title, and then we have another narrative of Tuimanua is saying, "Oh, Tuimanua Atele," and it was so influential, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they look to be opposed to each other. This is the most reasonable way to say, well, actually, if a Tuitonga has marries the Tuimanua Fefine, which carried the title, and they have a son, and that son
Yes.
chooses to have the Tuitonga title and the Tuimanua title, then all of a sudden these two stories are not in conflict. They are now
Yes.
aligned because
Yes.
if the Tuitonga also carries the Tuimanua title, then you can say, and it would be true, that
Yes.
Tuimanua was the highest ranking person in all of Polynesia. And you would say, oh yeah, that's correct. But then you would have to ask the second question: is it because of the Tuimanua? And they would probably say, no, it's probably because it's the Tuitonga. Because if you remove the Tuitonga, the Tuimanua does not carry the same weight.
Yeah. 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 It would if you just use the Tuimanua, it would just stay within the Ha'amoa archipelago in the islands. It wouldn't spread. You use the Tuitonga title because then the Tuimanua lives on. The story will live on till today because people know the Tuitonga from Hawaii to Rapa Nui, Aotearoa, and to Fiji.
Yeah,
That's how stories will be prolonged to, let's just say, not evaporate to the modern day. And that's why we talk about the Tui Tonga today. I mean, it helps having ruins and Tonga not being colonized, but let's just say if Tonga lost its sovereignty and was colonized like every other Polynesia, I still think that that oral narrative history, it would have some a lot more, let's just say, add-ons, but the Tuitonga, because it was so recognizable, it would probably withstand and still exist today. That's just my personal opinion to that. But it's a lot clearer when we have ruins, Tonga not being colonized. The stories are a lot more clearer in my understanding with the oral history, with the oral history of the Tuitonga, which helps a lot. But
yeah.
that's just my
And
opinion there.
then and then you would answer one of our questions that we've always asked. If the Tu'imanua couldn't even bring in the Western Samoan Islands, and how can you say the Tu'imanua Atere? However, if the Tu'imanua is also the Tu'itonga, and we know the Tu'itonga has ruins in Western
Correct.
Samoa, then all
Yeah.
of a sudden you could make the claim, oh yeah, the Tu'imanua was over the
Yeah.
Western Samoa Islands, but it wasn't simply because of the Tu'imanua title alone. It was when
Yeah.
the Tu'itonga title and the Tu'imanua title were one. So, want to thank Devita Malo for the super
Malo.
chat. Greatly appreciate it and appreciate the support there, Devita. So there is a follow-up comment to this Masi, and I would like this individual. We tried a couple times to have him join us. He grew up in Haamoa. I think it's called Fangaloa on the eastern
Mm-hmm.
side of Upolu. So we really wanted to bring him on. We're trying to work out our schedules, but can you read his comment in response to the comment that we just read earlier? And he's
All right.
Samoan, born and raised in Hamoa.
Okay. So Tuya Tua. This is from TikTok. The Tuitonga son named Ulu Alofainga came back to Samoa and lives in Fangaloa district, and he became the king of Fangaloa. Later agreed by the Tafaifa of Samoa to be king. The question is, why us Samoa only agree that only if you're from the Tuitonga bloodline can be king or queen in Samoa? According to traditions, for example, Salamasina
Yeah.
was the ruler of Samoa because she was from the royal Tuitonga family bloodline. That's why High Chief in Samoa will go and find a royal family to marry so they can have that power like Tamalelangi. Awesome. Tua, what's your thoughts?
Yeah. So the thing that I want to kind of express here and discuss here is people who push this tu'imanua position, they make it sound like the oral history in Samoa is a consensus. They make it sound like all of Ha'amoa is aligned and these things are not a debate, right?
Mm,
You go to Tonga, there is no debate on the Tu'itonga's position, role, influence, not just in Tonga, but throughout Polynesia. There are
yeah.
the minorities are those who push against this, right? But you go to Ha'amoa and there's not a consensus that the Tu'imanua. In fact, many, and we spoke with Jacob Fitzemanu, a lot of the chiefs and the Tu'i Atoas and Atuas and the Anos or whatever from Western Samoa, they are in direct conflict many times with the
Mm,
Tu'imanua, right? And this is a really, really important thing. And what Tu'i Atua is mentioning here that's really important is it all comes down to the blood and the ache, right? And we haven't released this as an official episode yet, but it is upcoming of the first contact of Europeans with those in
oh, that's
Ha'amoa.
right.
And you know what the highest ranking chiefs, when they get on the boats, they do two things. They speak Tongan because they say the Tongans are recognized as the foreigners and the long distance travelers. And the second one is they don't get on the boat and ask for the ali'i. They don't get on and ask for a tupu or whatever. They ask kohaye eiki.
Mm,
They're asking who's Eiki, meaning Who is the one with the blood? Who is the Aki is the leader because of blood, right? And
Yep.
so when that episode gets released, it'll become very clear that power and influence was recognized, as Tuya Tua here is saying, proximity to the Tuitonga. That's what it was all about. Even even the Marietoa, despite having a small military, wouldn't even call it military, but a physical conflict for one little battle,
Yep.
even they recognize you can have that quote unquote small victory, but you know what gives you more influence? You marry into the Tuitonga line. So what do? Within the same generation, the Marietoa people
Mm,
marry into the Tuitonga. And why? Because that's how the other chiefs were obtaining prestige and power and recognition.
mm. No, no, awesome. And no, I was just gonna say that it's a good insight for from Tuya Tua regarding that nugget there with the Fangaloa kind of oral history that he kind of grew up with. So, and like what you said, these discussions need to, it looks like, needs to happen a lot more within our brothers and sisters in Ha'amoa to kind of understand, because it seems to be there's a lot of misunderstanding with just even their history leading up to now, right? It's just kind of whatever that group says, there's always a conflict. So
Yeah.
I appreciate Tuya Tua kind of sharing that, because it seems like there needs to be a lot of discussion, because like what I think you mentioned it, Tua, the more discussion and the more you share your idea, you put it into the table and everyone can critique and see if this is true or not. And then if it's true, it will withstand the challenges. If it's not, then it'll be easily picked apart. So I appreciate Tuya Tua sharing that comment and for us to share it on the digital live cover session.
Not
So
100%. And here, I'll read this one for you. Mr. Atero Brown Monk asks, and maybe you can give some context. Can we analyze the word tui? Tui in Tongan is king, but does not carry the same meaning in Samoa. King in Samoa, I believe, is tupu, right? Correct
mm,
me if I'm wrong. This may contradict the Samoa Tui title. And we kind of talked about this a little bit with Fitzemanu, but kind of give
yeah.
your thoughts on this, Masi, while I line up the next question from social media.
Okay. So I think we'll just go with what Fitise Manu mentioned, and I'm trying to recall here. He's saying that two e was used in Samoa, but it was like standing. So two e what in that place, kind of like two e whatever. So that's how he kind of broke it down. But monk is correct. Tupu is the common word that's probably used a lot within Samoa as to reference to king. And tupu is just really more what a definition of an increase, to
Hmm.
increase, kind of the same thing with Tongan. So that's what I recall what Fitise Manu mentioned with Tui, that it was referenced in those days. But you know, that's probably a word that needs to probably be refined and maybe have more of our Samoan brothers and sisters probably uh kind of provide their definitions, because to my understanding, if you recall it too, Tua, he mentioned that tui in Samoa was like two standing,
Yeah,
whatever, right?
tu'i, to stand somewhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
to stand somewhere wherever you're ruling in your region or whatever, and that's why that has the word, tui aana, tui atua, in that in those in that definition. But I like what you said, monk. You know, that's probably we need more of our Samoan brothers and sisters to kind of carry what they're, because it like you said, it seems like no one, right, everyone needs to add their definition to what that is. Tonga, there's really no one can throw their ideas, because it's universal that Tui is a powerful paramount king chief, right, wherever you're at. So I don't, that's just my thoughts there too, unless you had anything else.
Nope. I think you covered that well for us. So appreciate the comments there.
Yep.
Next question. Did you read the last one or did I read the last one?
You read the last one, I can read this one.
Okay, read this one.
All right, this is from, is it Haumana Tukuafu 1146. It's no question that our Tongan ancestors traveled far distances by double-hulled canoe, but supporting the notion that the slabs of the Ha'amonga and Maui came from Uvea or the Wallis Islands is also supporting the ideas of others that aren't aware of the is it
Pangay, pangay
Pangaimotu
motu. Yeah,
Pangaimotu song slash chant. As all the stone there, Wallis Islands are basalt, and the slabs are of coral reef. According to the lyrics of the Pagaimotu chant, it says all the rows of Mu'a, including the Langi of Paipaio Terea, were cut from the shore of Pangaimotu in Tonga. He koeku tamai koine kui na italaia kau ki he taimi na wo o folau ki nukuhiva I he fu'uvaka o Tonga. So it's absolutely no question of Tonga's travel to far distances. Great video, by the way. Happy us Tongans think out of the box. Maria, Tua, what's your
yeah,
thoughts there?
yeah. So fair point. One of the things that we recognize and why it's important to have these conversations, because there are oral histories throughout Polynesia, right? And there's little pieces of evidence throughout the different parts of the civilization. There are videos for this brother, I forgot his name, Haumana Tuwafu,
Mm,
of people in Uvea and Futuna where there are coral rocks and there's a video of a gentleman um, where his family, I think, comes from the Tatu'i Hatakalawa, and he's from Mua. There's a village in that area called Mua, and he says, as they're walking by coral rocks, and he says, these are the rocks that were cut and taken to Tonga for the Ha'amonga
mm,
and for the Langis, and it's right by the ocean, right? And they could come up and cut the rocks. We've also heard stories of oral history of Ewa, right?
mm-hmm,
Where Ewa, people say that in Ewa there were stones cut there. And we have stories from all over. We're open, we throw everything at the table, and everything is feasible. To me, there's the important thing here. And we discussed this on one of our other um videos. The most difficult parts of moving the stones is not necessarily while they're in the ocean. It's cutting it, getting it on the boat, and offloading of the boat to the location, right? And moving it on land. And so even if it came from another part of Tongatapu and they put it on a boat and they brought it over, it is still a marvel that they were able to do those things, right? Now we're talking about 40 tons of stone, right? Now
mm,
imagine the size of the carillas that have to carry this, right? One of the oral histories or the encounters that we find of first Europeans in Hamoa. Remember, Hamoa gets the nickname Navigator's Island, right?
correct.
And the reason why they got that nickname is these Western ships were going by. They didn't even stop in Manua. They were
Yeah.
just sailing by and they saw a large fleet of boats. And they
Mm-hmm.
said, holy smokes, these guys are navigators, right?
Yep.
So the assumption is, remember, Mussy, we jokingly said on the podcast maybe a year ago, you know what would be hilarious? Is if they were just driving by, I mean, sailing by, and they saw those big boats and they were actually Tongan Carillas there. Because remember, they didn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we looked at the compilation of the first contacts with Europeans and in Hamoa, you know what they said? That the big boats were always associated with the Tongans coming in.
Mm-hmm.
The big
Mm-hmm.
Karias, like they would know when the Tongans were there because their boats were much larger and were able to carry at large scale. So I did find that interesting, but I mean, I appreciate how Mana's comment there. We
Mm,
don't. There's a real possibility. Yes, some of the stones came from Pangai Motu, but there's oral histories and so forth that say they come from other areas that seem possible. So
yeah.
that's
And
that's kind of my thought there.
Yes. So and he's saying Pangay Motu Haapai, right? He said, was he saying or
I
Pangay
was thinking
Motu?
Pangay Motu right by Tongatapu, but maybe it is Pangay Hapay. I
Okay.
don't know.
No, I mean that's the third, right? Because the two most common one was Futuna and Uvea
Yeah.
and Ewa. So hey, I appreciate the comment from how Mana just sharing that to Wafu, sharing that because now there's a third oral story that needs to be brought to the table, and the more you share it, we can discuss, and if it withstands some of the critique and other oral history compared to the other two, let it be there, and it could be maybe all three because I do believe you're talking about you're talking about so many langis that exist today, and there's probably langis that it's probably loss of the in time that
Yeah.
who knows? We probably needed so much other other rocks. We probably needed Ewa and Uvea and Fortuna and probably this place in Paraimotu. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't take that out of the table. So it could be all three, but that's definitely new. That's definitely new. So I've never heard of Paraimotu being a place that we could use to make ruins. But yeah.
All right. I'm trying to pull up our next comment. Let's see here. Let's share this tab. Let's see anything else from TikTok that we can
And
bring
good
out. We don't.
questions to them, man. Good,
Yeah.
great comments and stuff that our viewers and people who also have questions. It's good.
Let's read these comments right here.
Want me to read that first
Says,
one? The
yeah, read that first one. Let me open the video. Let me open this video. So let's play the video, and then because it's this one is one of our very early videos, and
okay.
it's still getting comments to this day. But let's just listen through this video and then see what the comment was.
Oh, I'm not hearing anything, Tua.
You're not hearing anything?
Yeah,
Oh, what I might have to do is it's re-added in here. How about now?
yep.
Let me see if I can restart the video. Your thoughts on coming from Taiwan must. Mm. Your thoughts on coming from Taiwan must. So that's the video, and then this is the comment. With that
Okay.
said, and that with theory, if it's from the Americas side, surely they should have come to Samoa before hitting Tonga, right? What are your thoughts? So they're basically saying because Samoa is somewhat closer to the Americas, they should have hit Samoa first. Therefore, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense that we came from the Americas.
Well, they should have settled and create a civilization in Tahiti. That's closer to the Americas than Samoa. Like there's the reason why we share that Hikureo being the only kind of God, right? That spiritual God that was guiding the first people to settle in Tongatapu because that was the chosen place for whatever reason. I mean, we have our own reasons why it was chosen, but it was chosen that this is where the Polynesian civilization is gonna start and spread, right? And then it spread to Ha'amoa as long as the data goes to Ha'amoa and to the rest of Polynesia. I know, I know some of the especially people like the academics. I think we had a discussion. Burley's a strong advocate that it was the Austronesian. That's the term they use,
Hmm.
coming from Taiwan. But it's they're saying that because of the pottery. That's kind of their main evidence. But then it was very interesting that people who see this episode that there were some of his findings of pottery that they couldn't, even up to today they can't identify its origin. They were able to find some other potteries that they were able to trace from the Austronesian um, people, right, saying that Taiwan and coming and documenting through that way. But there's still a lot of holes that they can't explain, especially with the some of the potteries that they found, and also, right, the ruins. And that's the thing. And if we had more time, that we could have talked about was also the ruins, because to me a big evidence is our main structure is the Americas, is the Sun Gate, the Ha'amonga, which is only in Tongatapu and in the Americas. And that's a strong indicator of an advanced knowledge and structure of a civilization that has come. They also use DNA, right? That the Austronesian DNA has strong, and I think, and I think there was some study. I don't know if you can, if you know something about this, but because I do believe that there was a lot of need of women. There was a lot of bringing women over,
Mm.
probably from that side of the world, that Papua New Guinea, Malaysia, Taiwan, maybe from that area, that apparently the women's DNA tend to pass along stronger and be, through the generations compared to the father's DNA. I don't know. That's one scientific paper that I did read, or an article that's saying that when DNA is passed along through the generation, the mother's DNA tend to last and be a stronger test of results compared to the father's DNA. That's what I've kind of read, and that very makes sense when you're bringing people to go and test in testing for DNA that has strong resemblance to that side of the world. But the problem with that side of the world in Asia, one is our culture and our ruined building. There's no ruined building as what we have in Tongatapu that compares to what we have in Taiwan or the Austronesian people. It's very close to to the Americas. And not only that, David Tafale has also mentioned with some of our vegetables, the Tongan vegetables and fruits have strong origins to the Americas, coming from there. And those are probably the first fruits that they came with, coming from the Americas to first start the civilization. Because our agriculture is very strong in the ancient Americas, ancient peoples of the Americas compared to Asia. That's just my thoughts there to answer that. So that person's question is that person's question is saying that why it passed Samoa, Hikureo guided the first founders or our forefathers of Polynesia to come to Tonga and pass many islands, not just Samoa, but many islands on its way to Tongatapu. But I don't know if you have anything else, Tua, but those are my thoughts
Yeah,
there.
yeah. One of the things that I think, and I didn't understand this until having more conversations, um, how difficult it is to find land in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Right.
Mm,
This is the reason why Captain Cook and all these guys were going back and forth. They were almost kind of like in a pattern approach through the coordinates. They were trying to systematically map out Polynesia, because when you go out there and you don't know where you're going, your percentage of dying is significantly higher than you finding an island. There's a reason why when people get lost in the Pacific Ocean and you don't find them, highly unlikely they found an island. It's highly unlikely because the Pacific Ocean is so big and the specks of land are so small, the odds are not in your favor to find land. So, just because something is geographically closer to the Americas doesn't mean that you'll find it, right? So that's the first piece. And then I align with what you said, Masi, that the founding fathers of the Polynesian Empire, they were led. They weren't just drifting out in the ocean. The Hikuleo, right? Their God was guiding them
Mm,
specifically to arrive at a location. And even if they found Ha'amoa or Hawaii,
yeah,
the driver was, we keep going until Hikuleo says, this is the
this is the
place,
place. This is the
right?
place.
So there's many ways to explain that. Some interesting comments that was shown here by Mel and also by Brown Monk on blood types and haplogroups that
Mm,
give a variety of options to things like you were saying, Masi, of you know, movement of people, right?
mm,
Of marriages and offspring. But one of the things that I prescribe to, as you mentioned, is DNA tells us where genetic material comes from, but it doesn't tell us where ideas come from. Like
yeah.
you're saying, where does the idea of Ha'amonga come from? Where does the
That's my biggest
idea,
question. Yes.
yes,
Yes.
where does the idea of building earth mounds come from? Right? Like I use this example many times. If you were to come and then you do 5,000 years from now, America doesn't exist, and you
Yeah.
happen to do an excavation and you find something in Chinatown, and you find out, holy smokes, 90% of the people here are from China, right? And then they say, oh, that means America came from China. And they're like,
Mm,
that couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, the genetic material came from China, but the idea of three equal co branches of government, a constitutional republic, right? Freedom
yeah.
of property, freedom of rights, freedom of religion, that genetic material is not going to tell you where those ideas come from. And I'm more interested in those ideas. I am also, I know, I don't know where you stand, but I know Tevita Fale, he pushes and he's very adamant on many of these islands were founded and settled first by the founding fathers. They came from the Americas. I'm open to that, right?
Yeah.
However, I'm also open to the idea that there could have been people on these islands, right?
Mm,
But that the founding fathers came with the science, the technology, the civilization building, right? The kingly structure to allow a civilization and an empire to be built and to be maintained over thousands of years. I'm open to that as well. And that could be many ways to explain the genetic material. Masi,
oh,
oh, go ahead.
yeah.
You had a
No,
comment.
I know. I had a comment because this is the thing, right? If Tonga, the Tui Tonga Empire was so vast, you're bound to have. It's almost like when you take. Let's just say if you did a DNA of people in Rome right now, because Rome was an empire, you're gonna get DNA that comes from Germanic areas in Germany. You're gonna
Hmm.
get DNA from people from Spain, all the way from England. Does that? That's that we all know that's not the case because what makes we know that Rome existed because of its ruins, right? If they brought that same let's just say if they brought that same idea and started academics really did some research and finding on the ruins where those ideas came from because the Colosseum and the way Romans did their roads, right? That's a Roman thing and we know that empire existed. So we all know when you have an empire, DNA is not a it's not the be all be all evidence to say where your origin comes from. And that's the
Yeah.
same thing with Tonga. We all know the Tui Tonga Empire was the empire of Polynesia of many years. And you're going to have, when you're an empire, you're going to have the people of the ancient days in Papua New Guinea, Australia. even up to Asia, because there's some stories of Japan and even Korea. Like you're gonna have stories of people knowing that ancient civilization and them coming in and mingle in Tonga and their DNA is in Haamoa. Like to me, I don't why, and this is probably right. This is the flaws of some of the research. They're not giving the benefit of doubt with Tonga being just the Polynesia, us being a Polynesian, that we had such a thing existing, right? They just know we were expert navigators, and that's kind of about it. But they're not coming to the full understanding of our Inasi and Polo Polo regarding the tax system in Polynesia, and also the Polo Polo with our ancient religion and how vast we were. So to me, that's see the issue with the DNA testing. If you just did DNA and there's that, because that seems to be their main thing, the Austronesian, the origin DNA. So it must be coming from Asia. Then they're adding the pottery stuff. If you apply that same study, and this, they're not, remember, a lot of them are just dating the ruins, but they're not diving deep to where the idea, like you mentioned, Tua, the idea and the understanding of where these ruins were created and why they were created. America would be the only source of where that came from. But imagine if they just use DNA in the Empire of Rome. Tua,
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
they'll do the DNA. They say, oh, maybe the origin of Rome came from Spain because we have DNA coming from Spain or coming
mhm.
from Saudi Arabia or whatever. It's like, dude, Rome was so huge that you're gonna get different people migrating to Rome. It's the same thing with the Tuitonga Empire. When you're the empire that region, you're gonna bring people that are gonna come over. So I don't know. That's just kind of my idea of some
Yeah,
of the
100%.
flaws they're having
100%. I mean,
with
and
that.
let's extend that. This is not just, let's use the, like you said, Rome. We talked about. Let's do Masi, your observation of New Zealand right now and Indians coming into New
Mm.
Zealand. Imagine if they did DNA samples and they're like, holy smokes, there's a lot of genetic material from India. So the people in New Zealand must be from India, right? Like, and this is
Yeah,
the
a
problem when
thousand
you
years from
only,
now, a thousand
yes,
years from now, and they do some genetic testing and DNA, and they say DNA does not lie, but the DNA is gonna tell you, oh, I've I've picked up a DNA. It's saying it's coming from Mumbai in in India. Is this where New
yeah,
Zealand came after 1,000 years? That's so
yeah.
funny.
And then they found the DNA from Mumbai, and then they find the Marais, and they're like, oh, the Indians from Mumbai came and built the Marais and the Wakas and all that stuff. It's like, see, if you really believe, and this comes back to, if you really believe that our ancestors were moving at
Yep.
a phenomenal rate and traveling and they were trading, you can see very quickly how the genetic material, if that's your only data point, the genetic material can be somewhat misleading. I'm not saying disregard it. It's telling
Yeah.
us a story, but it is not the whole story. It's telling us, hey, there is a relationship to the
Mm,
Melanesian and the Austronesians. There's a story there. But to say that that's the origin and the only way to explain where our people came from, several
yeah.
flaws. And one of the flaws, Masi, you're going to appreciate this, from Water Bears himself, our official PR. It's been a while, Water Bears, Malo Lele, but he says, thank you for the digital kava bag, Water Bears. Water Bear says, DNA tells you who the father is on Maury. You know that the Uli Uli guy,
Yes,
the
yes,
Maury
yeah,
show, the
yeah,
Jerry Springer,
yeah,
the Uli Uli Jerry
yeah,
Springer, Masi, and he
yeah.
says, you are not the father. So that's
Water
that's kind
bears.
of the
That's
joke.
funny.
Malo.
Yeah. Water bears and Malo Maukava. Water bears. Malo. Thank you for
Yes,
joining, man. It's been a minute.
yes. Thank you, Water Bears, Malo and Mau Kava, for the digital kava bag here on the super chats. So that's that. I think that's a really important thing to kind of understand there. Once
Mm,
again, guys, we're just for those who are joining in, coming, and there's movement in the live digital kava session. If there's a specific topic you want to bring up, please throw in your digital kava bag with
yep.
the super chats. Bring it in. We're really focusing on live members who are sharing their questions, their comments, and then also social media comments as well. So let's see.
Awesome questions,
And
Tua. These are good questions.
yes, these are great questions. Let me see if there's anything here we want to add. Let's go back to Facebook.
Yes, I know our
Mm,
Facebook is accounts have been doing a lot of going stuff, a lot of back and forth and all of that.
okay. Here's another one says um this comes back to, remember Mussy, the progenitors,
Yes,
the
the letter,
progenitor. Yes,
that
so this
letter,
is talking
yes.
about the letter. And let me bring that up. Let me make that comment here real quick. It says, "Stop arguing, everyone. Their own king says, from thence Samoa sprang our progenitors.
Yeah.
If you don't know what the word means, look it up." And then they have a screenshot of that. And
I
so,
think I think you explained that really well, Tua, right? You explained that part of the progenitors really well with the mother side. I think maybe
mhm,
you should reiterate your explanation on that.
yes. So one of the things that, because they reference that, just for those who are not always aware, um, with the context of this, right? Um, there's a letter that Tupo the First writes, and he says he's explaining why he's spending so much time in Hamua, right? And even
Yes.
to this day, Masi, I think you experienced this too. Um, there's the Lotu Konga, right, or the Tongan
Yes.
church,
The
and
Wesleyan Church.
yes,
Yes.
and a big part of it is because Tupo the First's influence over there, and even I
Yep.
heard stories of the Wesleyan missionaries were not treated well, and Tupo the First went and engaged in
Yes.
physical matters
Yeah.
to stop the treatment of the missionaries.
Persecuting the missionaries
Yes,
in
and
Samoa.
so Tupo the First writes this letter and explains, "Hey, look, the reason why I'm interfering with Hamoa is actually there's a long history between us, right? Not just me, but also the Tuitonga, that from there our progenitors sprang up, right?"
Yes.
And so people have taken that and said, well, that means the
That's
Tuitonga and
they're
the
the
Tui,
origins.
there's the
Samoa is the
origins.
origin.
Yes.
Yes.
However, I think they are conveniently forgetting that each person has one or two progenitors, Masi.
Eh, eh.
Some people, they're making it sound like, oh, it's guaranteed you only have, like, we recognize many of the progenitors of, not all, but some of the Tuitonga came from
Yes.
Hamoa. Some were from Uvea Futuna, some were from Hawaii, some
Yep.
are from all over Polynesia. And so we take the position of, yes, you can say that because many of the mothers came from Hamoa, but that does not exclusively mean that the males came from there as well. And so
Mm.
we that's our pushback on that. But some people think, once again, just like the DNA, they get one data point, and even that data point isn't as strong as they think it is, and they think case closed, slam dunk, and that's it.
Mm. No, awesome. Awesome. No, I think that's the I think you explained it correctly to us. Progenitors is it takes two to create another human being, and we've always maintained that a lot of them came from Haamoa, but the especially the title holders of the Tui Tonga title, the Tui Tui Hatagalaua title holders, and the Tui Kanupolu were always from the male line of Tongatapu, because that's how it always kind of was passed down. So yeah,
Awesome. Let me pull up this video.
I think I'll share some of the other one. I think there was one comment you it just I just remembered you wanted me to explain with Amma, the Samoan family that moved
Oh,
from
yes, yes.
Haamoa to Tongatapu, and that goes in with what we were saying here. Remember that's the mother side. So Ngata's mother, the first Tuikanupolu, Ngata's mother was, or is it Ngata's wife? I think it was Ngata's wife. Is from Haamoa, Upolu, and when he married her, remember, we got to remember that a lot of the resources and followers were already taken up and absorbed to the Tuitonga, because the Tuikalpolu had it really tough, because the Tuitonga moved back to Tongatapu. The Tui Hatagalawa was still existing and living on Tongatapu. So a lot of the followers and, let's just say, resources were absorbed in all of Tonga between those two title holders. So when Ngata married the Haamoa lady, she brought all her family, because remember,
Hmm.
you're you're marrying to the third most powerful title holder in all of Polynesia, marrying and bringing all her entire family and settling in Tongatapu, so that you
By
have
the
workers,
thousands, by the
thousands.
thousands.
You have workers, you have followers, you have warriors. You're coming to establish a new thing, because you're getting absorbed by the Tui Tonga and the Tui Kalpolo with, they're absorbing a lot of the supporters, workers, everything. So that's why you're bringing all over that people to come and settle Tonga. They didn't establish anything, because they were just using the same structure what the Tui Tonga, Tui Hatagalawa were doing. And remember, they were delegated as the political caretakers and political um, affairs, like the foreign affairs that we have in today's modern world. They were the affairs of the daily operation of the Tuitonga Empire. That's what they were doing. That's
Yeah.
what they were doing. So hopefully that explains that part to us. Because I
Yes,
remember,
I also wanted you to touch a little bit, Mussy, on your thoughts in that comment. And sorry, everyone, we're going like two comments back, but it's important because in that comment they said that it was the Haamoa who came and structured and set up the Tu'ikanukupolu, and that's the structure that we have in the Tu'ikanukupolu. What are your thoughts on that comment? That really that's where that originates from.
that probably, because I know there was, remember, was there like because I always thought it was like by an election, and then we had, I think it was Maui Tekelangi, that Tuikarupol was always kind of father to son, kind of like the
Hmm.
other title holders. But I know there has been some history with the Tuikarupolu having a woman for a little short amount of time to become the Tui Polu. There was a female, which we don't find in any of the lines of the Tui Hatagalawa and the Tui Tonga. But maybe that's because, remember, it is very common from some of the histories that I've heard, and also even in today, that women were very allowed to be the tui or a matai in Haamoa. And maybe that thing, I know this lady was a powerful lady. I think she's also a descendant of the tui Hatagalawa, but maybe that's kind of the Haamoa influence, that they allowed this lady to kind of become a tui Karupolu for a short amount of time. But a lot of the structure, to me, a lot of the structure in the tui Karupolu title holders were the same structure as the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatagalawa. The only difference was they didn't have Taumafakava, right? It was just Ilo Kava.
Hmm.
And not only that, because it was done by father to son most of the time, that the Tui Polo had troubles having people establish lines. But maybe, and that's probably another Samoan influence too, because I'm thinking of Area Motua. The before Dubo the first had it, it could have gone to his son, and maybe that's kind of the Ha'amoa influence, saying we'll just go with the most powerful person instead of following our, because it seems like it was really, they were not as strict. I don't know. That's what I'm just kind of thinking out loud, because there's been a Tui, Tui Karupolu Fefine, and then there's been a pass, instead of Are Motua's son, it went to the Dubo the first. And maybe that's the Samoan influence of, they were not too strict on having father to son. That's just me, like the Tui Karupolu, like the Tui Hatalawa and the Tui Tonga. That's just me thinking. I don't know if you. That's just my thoughts there, Tua.
No, 100%.
That's
One of the things I would ask when they brought that up is modeled after what? Right? Remember we had this conversation of, oh, like the kava ceremony, right? Like, oh,
yes,
the kava ceremony in Hamoa, it's
yeah,
sophisticated, and then we dig
yeah,
into it, it's not so sophisticated. So my question is,
yeah,
if that is true, what did they model the Tu'ikanukupolu after, right? And honestly, the more that the Ha'amoa way was quote unquote adopted, whether by design or not, things got more chaotic, right?
yeah.
Like the woman Tu'ikanukupolu for that short period of time that caused issues, instability,
Yes, yes,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and so there's issues with that, and really, if if really Ha'amoa was the origin of this sophisticated structure, why wasn't the empire run out of Ha'amoa?
yeah,
Why would you have to come to Tonga and set up a Tu'ikanukupolu? Because the Tu'ikanukupolu inherited the military, the political, and the economic power, right? Because
yeah,
the Tu'ikanukupolu now managed the Inasi every year. That's who
yes,
managed that, right? And so why would they have to come there to do it? Obviously, there's a recognition that Tonga was the center of power, and that's where you needed to be, right? It's like you wanna be the best boxer, you probably have to come to America because America has the resources, there's power. You want to be the best football player, you're not gonna stay in New Zealand and become the best football player in the world. No, you have to come to America where geography matters. And I think it's kind of silly to say, oh, the Tu'ikanukupolo, we had to go from Ha'amoa to set up the Tu'ikanukupolo. And then in that same comment, he says, if we united, we would have been able to take Tonga easily.
yeah,
And you know what? That's the biggest if. Tell me a time when all of Ha'amoa was united consistently for a long period of time. Even to today, there's American Samoa and there's Samoa, and there's
yeah,
been a split. And we've talked about this many times. It's because the the political structure in Samoa is decentralized, and it's by design. And Xiaoxi Eli Yu shares this observation. He goes throughout Polynesia, and you know what he sees? Decentralized power in Uvea and
mm,
Futuna, decentralized power in Tuvalu, decentralized power in Samoa. Even in Hawaii, it's decentralized power. It wasn't until Kamehameha that the power became centralized. But there is only one place that has consistent centralized power over thousands of years, and it's the Tuitonga. So please explain to me how Ha'amoa was going to set up centralized power when they've never had centralized power. The
mm,
best that Ha'amoa can come up with is, well, we have oral history that Datu Imanua Tele was this tremendous centralized power, but we couldn't even have Savai and Upolu listen to us. Yeah, I think that's a hard pass for me,
yeah,
Maki.
yeah. No, and I was just gonna add to like why, you know, why the we all know that Tuitonga started, the Tangaloa started in Tongatapu. Tuitonga just carried on to that to Tongatapu. The Tui Hatagalawa started in Tongatapu. The Tui Galpolu, if he really did wanted to, let's just say, establish and take over, and he had so many Samoan influencers, why did they all move and leave in the thousands to settle in the Hihifo part? It's like
Yeah,
Rome. Let me just, I just like to use other empires because that's the level that Tuitonga were on. You know what Romans did when they took over a region? They take all the people of the high rank in that region, they take them back to Rome to teach them how to run a military, teach them the functions of running an empire, the tax system in Rome. It's the same thing with the Tuigalpolu when Ngata married a high noble woman of Haamoa. Bring her and they come to Tongatapu because the Tuigalpolu needs to learn how to run the affairs. Because who's the last person to run the empire? Was the Tui. the Tui Hatagalawa family and the Tui
Mhm.
Tonga family. They were the last ones to run the affairs. So when you're a new established title holder to learn the ways of doing, what do? You don't go, you could have run it in Tahiti, you could have run it in Hawaii, you could have run it in Ha'amua. Why come to Tongatapu to get close to the origin and learn from the people who've done it before? Just like the Romans, if you have a new place, right? What do you do with this new place? You send all those people to the capital, just like in Tongatapu, is like Rome. You educate them on how to run the daily affairs of the empire. That's where you learn at the core. I don't know. It just came to my mind when you were sharing that, Dua. How empires, like running the empire and running a vast civilization is the reason why you come to the core to learn these things. You don't just learn it from a place that's never known how to run empires before, let alone a
No,
whole island, right?
yes. And that's what I was kind of mentioning. How you say you're gonna come and set up a centralized power where you've never had centralized power before,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is from I don't know how to say this handle. Well, we'll just call it N8s. And he
Oh,
says, "Stay
nice.
safe out there and keep your head up. The world's been crazy." Malo, appreciate that digital kava bag there.
Hey,
And
Malo
then
Maukava.
Malo and Maukava, appreciate it. So I want to share this real quick. I'm trying to. There's
I'm
been some.
assuming
Oh,
I'm
go ahead,
assuming
Messi.
our no, I was gonna say assuming our that comment is the world is going crazy. Are you guys make is your guys' side of the world making the world crazy, Tua, or what's going on? What's eh? Are you guys
Yeah,
making the world crazy? What's going on?
what's going on over there? So there's this. So this is Kalapu Moatonga post here. Let's
Okay.
play this video. I pulled it up here. This is not Samoa. Let's play this video, and then I want to read through some of the comments on this one. Let me know. Did you hear the sound on that earlier,
Yep.
Masi?
Yep.
Okay.
It's good.
This is not Samoa and Tonga. This is all Tuitonga Empire. This
Correct.
is just a bunch of families. Tuitonga had, quote, and I'll quote Samoan blood because the reality is there was no nation
Samoa.
of Samoa. It was all one nation, the Tuitonga
Mm,
Empire. The Tuitonga marries someone from Samoa. It's not like, oh, we're marrying into a foreign nation.
mm,
It's like one village marrying into another village. When we got to roll back our mentality and realize Tonga, Samoa were just part of the Tuitonga Empire. When Tupo the First is saying that, it's like someone saying, yes, some of my ancestors come from that village,
mm,
but it's in the same nation. And I think
mm,
that's something that's really important is the Samoan position here has a basic assumption. And that basic
mm,
assumption is that Samoa was an independent
mm,
nation. Samoa existed as an independent nation. So
mm.
that's the comment there. We've kind of talked about a bit. And I wanna focus on this Kalapumoa because they shared it,
Yeah.
right? And then there's a gentleman here that I didn't know who he was, or we still don't know who he was, but it says Kalapumoa says, "Do you believe that Tevita H. Fala's evidence is still good as the culture?" Right? And then so they're talking to Tokiuka Mea, this guy right there. And he says, Kalapumoa Tonga Tevita Fale, the original, is a priest of Hikuleo. His sons are just riding on his coattails and making things up as they go.
Mm.
They should make up their mind if they believe in the sacrament of the Mormon church or the old ways of Tonga. It's not a bet each way. Any thoughts on that, Masi, before we're gonna expand this out a little bit.
Um. Well, we've had Devita Fale on, and he hasn't mentioned anything that's different from what we've shared. So hopefully that helps with Toki Ukamea kind of mentioning. He must be the new Mariner Toki Ukamea that's going on. I don't know.
Masi.
That's my thoughts there.
Hey,
I don't
I
know if
I,
you had
wa- I
anything.
want to. I don't know if the comment is in here,
Eh?
but we gave Toki Ukamea a new name.
Eh.
and I
What's the
don't
new
know if
name?
it's here. Um, Let me see if I can find it. It'll be funnier if I can find this. His name is Karen Ukamea.
Oh, he's the female version of Mariner. Okay. Okay. Oh,
So
Tokyo got me fine. Maria.
yeah, yeah.
Maria.
Malohe kong ha mo
Yeah.
Karen Ukamea.
So
This
so
is
so
the
so Tokyo Mea is we already know he existed in Ha'apai Mava'u. Maybe this Tokyo
this is
Mea
breaking news.
came from Niwa. This Tokyo Mea Fefine came from Niwa.
No, don't do that. We come from Niwa. We don't want our Niwa family
Okay,
straight to
okay.
Hamoa. Karen
More.
Ukamea, because you
Okay.
know that's a matriarch type society. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
basically goes on here to say, you know, we're riding on the coat and the Mormon Masi. This is a guy who, if you read his comments, he talks about, you know, cycles of energy, and he's like, and we're the ones being crazy because we said Hikuleo might
Yeah, it's the same
be
God.
is the
It's
same
the
God
same
as
God of
Jehovah.
Israel.
Now
Yeah.
what's so difficult about that? It depends on your do you believe God is the father of all of us? Well, if God is
All
the
his
father of
children.
all of us, then all his children, then
Yeah.
is it so crazy to think that he would have talked to our ancestors? I don't think
Yeah.
that is
What
crazy.
is it crazy that there was a Tonganized or ancient Polynesianization of God that we said Hikudeo? I don't think that's far fetched. You know? Jeez.
Well, and then look at you know, let's try and find some follow some of his logic.
Okay.
Kalapu Moa, after he Toki or Karen Ukamea makes that comment, it says Karen Ukamea. That's an interesting input, Malo, for saying that. Devita Fale states that Hikuleo is the voice of the Savior. Do you mind sharing your input? You know what this sounds like? Is Kalapu Moa Tonga and Karen Ukamea the same person? Is this increased fleas right here?
That's what made me go back. Is like because we just for disclosure for all the viewers, looks like increased peace has kind of died down, but it was for a moment down. You know, there were some of our viewers would say, "Increase peace. Stop talking to yourself and having your own debate with yourself."
So
I
this is the
think
thing.
Toki Ugamea Fefine or Karen Toki Ugamea is having a debate within himself. Eh?
Himself.
What is that?
Because how convenient that Kalapu Moatonga asks a question that is exactly of what Karen Ukamea wants to talk about. Do you mind sharing your input with that in regard to your understanding or belief of Hikuleo? And then what's the look at this response right
Oh
here.
yeah, way PhD
Hey,
thesis right here, man. Yeah.
you know, in Tonga we call this, you know, right? Someone went so much thinking, so much work is just go
Yeah.
crazy. So I didn't think about it until now because I'm paying attention. I was like, how convenient this question in answering. However, Karen Ukamea says there is too much to be said about the spiteful, malicious, and deceitful behavioral pattern aligned to Hikuleo for one comment thread. Kalapu Moatonga, I'm so glad you asked this question. I made a whole page about the snake totem, Tukuhari and Hikuleo. Eh, Tama. But in the mythical, see, this is the thing. But in all the mythological subject matter that has remained, Hikuleo is a provocative figure who heaps challenges that seem unfair, behaves erratically, and runs on the children of noblemen. Maybe is this guy speaking like he found ancient scriptures on Hikuleo or something?
Interesting.
And
Very interesting.
unlike Maui, I guess where it's not Maui, it's Maui, who
Hmm.
serves men righteously by teaching them and pulling up islands of a beneficial nature. Hikuleo has rocky, earth shaken, and barren islands allocated to her. Yeah, that's how we know you're confused. Hikuleo is not a man. See, not only is it the Karen Ukamea version, but he's also taking the Fifine version of Hikuleo.
Feminizing everything, eh?
Can you show me a steady stream of myths in which Hikuleo ascends to the heavenly dimensions? Zip zero. Masi, I am convinced he's talking to himself.
I'm
And
glad you point this out
and then
to
look at
share.
the
Yeah.
response here, Masi. I don't even want to read it because look at him. He's like, "Rejoice then, O heaven, you shall dwell." So he's quoting scriptures or hymns, and Kalapu Moa, who is also responding, says, "Malo e talanoa whakafo'ofa e fiafini." He's complimenting himself. This is an interesting stand from your perspective that I will definitely look into.
Ew, wow,
This sounds
amazing.
even AI would do a better job than him talking to himself. When you mention hikuleo to be he or she, are you saying that it's a positive or negative force of energy? Look at him lead it to the next topic. If you message me privately or search Toki Ukamea, there are many posts on Hikuleo to explore. My man is doing self advertising.
That is mind blowing. The amount of energy. Hey, this is. I'm glad you shared this to just to share with our live digital kava viewers, man. That some of the digital world we have to navigate. Increase peace now.
What's the
Karen Tokyuka Mea.
hey? And if and, just because we're human beings, we might be wrong. And let's say they are different people. Kalapu Moatonga, remember the Mentai story and the Tuya Sosopo. You
Oh,
better not be sending Karen Ukamea money and making commitments and stuff. But
yeah.
here's the funny thing, Masi. So we responded and said, "Come join us and let us talk about what is fanciful and reality based on your position." This is us inviting him. Ideas, evidence, email us to schedule time and let people hear it and make up their own minds. I gave our email and everything. Hikuleo, what is your name so we can discuss properly other than your father's reputation? Do you ever stand in your own light? We just invited you to come up here and educate us.
Please
But
enlighten us.
yes, and it's funny, Masi, because in other comments, I've asked him or she or it or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it to come and join us, and they
No,
say
no,
they say they can't join us.
they can't join. Oh my goodness. Just let. I guess he just likes writing. The keyboard warriors stuff.
Let's see. Hey, palang
Well, Tokyo Kamea is a
isa
palangi
palang.
thing.
You know what? That's probably why he has the Karen. He fits it. The Karen Ukamea.
Oh man.
Interesting. Oh, anyways, thought that was interesting. And this is from Noah. A quick comment. I hugely disagree that the Tuitonga took over the whole of Samoa. Noah,
Man.
this is it would be great to have what exactly do you disagree with? Because
Yeah.
in a sense, we disagree as well in the fact
Yeah.
that there was nothing to take over when you are the founding settler.
Mm,
You're not really taking over, you are settling
yes.
Samoa. And
Yeah.
you know, we're currently rewarding our so Noah, please give more context there. We're currently rewarding a lot of our
Subscribers.
paying
Oh,
members on
paying
the channel.
subscribers. Yes.
So
Yes.
they're having an early access to an interview, the part 1 of 2 with David Burley, where he covers what the oral history in Tonga has been saying. This guy did archaeological work throughout Tonga for 30 years. He
Yes.
just released a book that actually, to everybody, I'll share the link
Yeah.
here. A free
And now,
download,
yeah.
free
Yes.
download. But go ahead, Mussy, while I look up that
No.
that
Yeah.
video.
No. I'll just kind of give a background story. I think everyone's kind of heard of the research studies in Nukureka. That's David Burley that we had on earlier. That that the only people that can get access to that is our paid subscriber or paid members. get the first dibs on that. It's just something for us to reward the um the people who have financially contributed to the Polynesianized podcast, so they get first dibs on it. But um, that's the person who led that research of the Nukureka, which is the oldest Polynesian settlement in all of Polynesia. So, you know, pretty cool story just to hear his side and kind of how he came to be. But but yeah, it was a very interesting and I think very informed interview or talanoa. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, 100%. And I'm just showing here. I put it in the comments. It should be on all the comments on Facebook, YouTube, and on Instagram. I don't think our comments go on to Patreon or X, but on those platforms, it'll share it. But this is the book that he wrote, The Birthplace of Polynesia, an Archaeological Journey Through the Kingdom of Tonga. Free download of the PDF. If you come here and you click this button right here, you can download the PDF version for free. But give more that's our position on that, Noah, for your question that
yeah,
you hugely disagree. um there was nothing to take over, just like we don't believe um that there was a war between Tuna and Fata and the Tuitonga.
scuffle. We
So
call it a
it's
little,
a
maybe a
scuffle.
family disagreement of how. Let's just say, maybe I try to make this maybe like a try to make it relevant today. Let's just say the older brother or the ulmotua or let's just say a matai made a declaration. They and then somebody within the family who's probably it's not their obligation to say anything disagreed and had a little scuffle. That's what
Yeah,
happened. And then the matai or the ulmotua said, "Oh, okay, okay, you do have some fight, and I'm impressed." But then the ulmotua or the matai title holder continues with their role later on. And now it's a little bit more of a discussion, and maybe instead of unilaterally making a declaration. I don't know. That's what I'm kind of trying to
yeah.
make it relevant. It was like a little family disagreement that had some physical altercations, but at the end of the day, I'm still gonna the head of the family and the tuitonga or the ulmotua still or the matai is still gonna continue with their responsibility. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. How
No, Masi,
I'm
this
trying to
is
make it relevant.
to also make it relevant. We got to remember that Talakai Faiki, his mom was from Hamoa. He was at his village, of his mother's village.
Yes,
So for him, naki mo
he was.
veu pe tafake ne fae, but tafake
Yeah.
ne tamai na mau pe ya. It was good.
Yes.
This is just
Yes.
a mother. This is uh the matriarchal side, the the mother side little scuffle, but the father side that was still
Yes.
structured and
Yes.
okay. So Noah does give an additional comment. He says, "We are under our own tuis, including Tuyatua, uh,
Or
Tuyana, and
yeah.
Tui." Right. So
Yeah.
we don't dispute that, Noah, but there was no supreme Tui over all those. We kind of Jacob Fitzemanu gave us some really good context about this, where he says these are regional, right, or
Yes.
sectional powers,
Yes.
but there was no centralized power or control over all of Ha'amoa. Tonga has multiple tu'is: tu'i Vakano, tu'i Perehake, tu'i
Yeah.
Kanukupolu, tu'i
Mhm.
Hatakalaua, but there was a tu'i of tu'is, and that was
Correct.
the tu'i Tonga. So
Correct.
we don't dispute that there were a variety of those, Noah. So really, we don't dispute some of that. I want to read this comment out, Masi.
Yep. This is from Noah. We have our own tui, including Tuya Tua, Tuya Ana, Tui Manua, who were also descendants of Tangaloa. The only part Tui Tonga rule was the villages that has no connection to either these Tuis or Tangaloa.
Mm.
Tua?
Yes. So there's a couple things. Number one, the simple fact that you can see that the Tuitonga had a presence in Ha'amoa is a major concession, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the reverse is not true in Tonga.
Correct.
And also the presence of the Tuitonga in Uvea, Futuna, Fiji,
Yes.
Tahiti, right? Tokelau and all those other areas, those connections. And you can also say we don't dispute that the Tangaloa had multiple children. Just like the Tuitonga had many wives
Yes.
and children, Tangaloa had many wives and children. And we aren't disputing that maybe some of these had descended from Tangaloa as well, but that was not unusual, you know,
Mm,
but there was only one heir who assumed the power and the authority, and it was either the direct heir from Tangaloa, and then
yeah.
eventually, when the last Eitu Matupua conferred the Tuitonga, he said all the power and authority will go through the Tuitonga line. And
Yeah.
we actually, from our perspective, the oldest of the or the heir of the Tangaloa line, that it became the Tuifareua, and then also now the Tuiperehake. So
Correct.
we don't
Correct.
dispute that at all, at any way. Um, so that's what kind of our position on that. Any thoughts on
Yeah.
that, Masti?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say. So he goes. We have our own Tui, including Tuya Tua, Tuya Ana, Tui Manua. They all acknowledge and know that the Tui Tonga was the superior, just rank wise, superior rank in Polynesia. That's even in their own oral histories. So there's that, and then the descendants of Tangaloa. I think you touched it really well. We're all descendants because of the, the I think
Tokatufa.
David Tokatufa that was defined and shared and created by David Tafale of the practice of how it was distributed, the Akis around Polynesia, and that was how it was maintained its power of the Tangaloa, which was the same practice that carried on to the Tuitonga. So we're all descendants of Tangaloa to today. So there's that, and then the only part Tuitonga rural villages has no connection to either these Tuis or Tangaloa. That's hard to dispute because I think everyone already knows that Tangaloa was a direct descendant of the current or of the Tuitonga that kind of took over, and then over time, which is transferred power to the Tupo family of today in Tonga. So you can say that Tangaloa power is still bloodline is still running through the current rulers of today because it's still the only monarchy still running, but just a smaller part of the once great Polynesian navigating nation in the world or empire, right?
Mm,
It's just retracted too small to what Tonga is today. But yeah, the family still exists in ruling in the modern days.
100%. There's interesting. So yeah, Noah, this is why it's good. I appreciate the comments.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's this, we're gonna ban this one user here coming in and try to make comments about drugs. So I guess is there probably a bot? Is this Karen Hukamea now joining in and asking about these
Infiltrated and put
infiltrated?
a button.
He got tired of talking to himself. And all right, Noah says everyone has their own tuis, not just Tuitonga. After the Tangaloa Empire ended, it all broken into different kingdoms, just like how after the Soviet Union ended, it all broken up into different nations. What are your thoughts
Mm.
on this, Mr. Atero?
No, maybe I guess we can talk about it a little bit. Maybe that's one thing that I didn't. The chief of war, because I watched a little bit how it said like the Oahu Kingdom, and then the Maui Kingdom. I think that's a little bit incorrect if I had to dive into it because it was more chiefdoms. The kingdom
Hmm.
is a direct centralized power. Hawaii didn't really have any centralized power until much modern times with King Kamehameha. So when they and maybe he's having that same definition of kingdoms. It was only chiefdoms and regional chiefdom, and not only that, the chiefdom is never there was really no direct line. To me, kingdom is a very structured line of who's the heir, which is a very common practice throughout ancient civilizations. But chiefdom is kind of like when I pass away, you don't know who's gonna take the heir because now it's all because it's not centralized, it's all broken up, and then there's a lot of civil wars and probably different families pulling who's going to be passed, or it could be like the Tuitonga, when one family is done ruling, when one family is done ruling, that another family has an opportunity to rule, become a tui of that chiefdom. That's how you maintain power. You know, while the Tuitonga was different, everything was
Mm.
centralized. There was an heir. So maybe that's the only thing, because now that series is probably, that's the only thing, if I had to critique, that's probably incorrect, and I had to probably critique their cultural expert that had on their side to do that. That I don't think it was a kingdom. That's incorrect. Incorrect interpretation of the history. Is it was a chiefdom.
Hmm. Quick question, Masi. Do you know if the Tuiatua and all those guys are they father to son, or are they like Matai system voted in?
No, it was it's Matai system of the families. Each families have their time to become ruler. Like for example, the Maria Toa line at the moment, there's three families that usually rotates. I think there's the Moli, and there's some other Maria Toa families. Right now, the families can't agree on who the Maria Toa title should go to. So since the last, I think it's almost 20 years since the last Maria Toa title has been bestowed. So it's kind of like that. Because they had other marriages to different families, it usually will rotate. But if the families don't agree, then it's like vacant. So up to now,
It's in in a
yeah,
deadlock. It's in a
correct.
deadlock. So this is important because this is a precursor to the position I'm going to give here to Noah.
Hmm.
If you believe that Tangaloa was in Haamoa, right, and that these families currently in Haamoa are the descendants of the Tangaloa that we're talking about, the system that you just expressed, the Matai system, is not a system of centralized power.
Yeah.
Empires need centralized power. If you don't have centralized power, you can never consistently have long-term vision, sustained vision, and endurance to maintain an empire. This is why America is not built to be an empire, because every 4 years, what happens? You could have a new president with a totally
Mm,
different set of priorities, total different set of goals, and so you can't have it when you have rotating power through different families, like you have in the Matai system. You could have one guy want to go right, the next guy wants to go left, right, left. This is why in Haamoa, with the Matai system, you've never had unified structure and order.
yeah.
So it's very difficult for us, Noah, to sit here and you say Tangaloa Empire and say that the Samoan system is the system of which the Tangaloa Empire was built on, because it's decentralized. It is not a strong system
Mm,
to maintain power. This is why father to son is very critical, because it breeds stability and long term maintaining of the goal. This is why, despite the fact that how, despite the fact that Tupo the first obtains the Tuikanukupolu by election, do you know what he does right after he gets into power and establishes himself? He reverts to father to son to father to son, because he recognizes that's not a recipe for success long term. So that's one
mm,
of my biggest doubts or biggest issues with this idea of Tangaloa is from Haamoa, and that the system in Haamoa of Matai system wasn't a system that inspired a empire, whether it's the Tu'imanua or the Tangaloa. It's because it's all decentralized. The proven history for Haamoa is decentralized power, and that wasn't something that was unique to Haamoa. You find that in
yeah.
Uvea, you find it in Hawaii, and there is never a known empire from anywhere else except for one, and it was Tonga. And what made Tonga different? centralized power and government and structure.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that is difficult to kind of express there, Noah. And then he has another comment is interesting fact: all the kings, including Tuitonga and Tuiatua across the Pacifica genealogy, have traced back into the same area around 900s. We've kind of debunked that severely, Noah.
Mm,
Tevita Fale's work alone pushes the Tuitonga into the 400
yeah.
AD. And then the archaeological work that's being done on some of these settlements of the Tuitonga and in those regions are
Yeah.
pushing it even further back,
Further.
potentially into the BCs. So, though I am open to the idea that some of these Tuiatua and so forth could have descended from Tangaloa, but that doesn't change the fact that there was a, if you want a Tangaloa empire, you probably, there's no way getting around. It was probably father to son, father to son, father to son. That's why in the story of Ahoetu, why was Ahoetu chosen to be the Tuitonga? There wasn't a vote.
Yeah.
Pangaloa Etu Matupua said,
Just
I'm the
declared
king,
it.
I'm in
Mm,
charge. This is what's going to happen. Right? So to me, there's just not enough context or history of centralized power in Hamoa to make that claim. That's why we were talking earlier, Noah, that one of the comments was, oh, Samoa had to come to Tonga to set up the Tuikanukupolu. And I'm like, set up what? The Tuikanukupolu is in Tonga, a nation or a centralized power scheme, and you're going to come with decentralized power scheme.
yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. We just needed no, and that's the thing, right? We just needed we needed people power and supporters. That's where Haamoa comes in. You marry into a powerful regional family, which Ngata did, and you bring pretty much her entire family, Zero Hihifo, but you're functioning within the structure of what the Tui Tonga, Tui Hatagalawa established.
Not 100%. Let me let me see if I have one more. We probably maybe enough time for one more, but
All right.
anything else anything else you wanted to bring up, Mr. Atero? I think we might be done.
Okay. No, no. I'm glad that we have a little session just to, get the comments of our viewers and people who are have interest in their Polynesian history. This is pretty cool because I know it's been a while since we've been busy with having interviews and just catching up on some other topics. But I'm glad we had this time before we end the year to kind of catch up with the comments because these are good conversation starters. You know.
Yeah. Not 100%, just to kind of go along that line. We're very grateful for everyone who interacts with the content on social media. As we mentioned, we've kind of gone through waves. Each platform has had its waves, right? We started off with TikTok. TikTok was on track to hit 1 million views when we first started in our first year. Then all of a sudden, YouTube started picking up. We're getting close to 1 million views on YouTube overall. About 100,000 views every month. And then all of a sudden, Facebook started picking up. Facebook will probably, by the end of the year, we'll have 1.5 million views. And so really appreciate all the interactions, all the feedback online, positive or negative, right? We don't
Yep.
discriminate. We appreciate all interactions. We encourage
Even
conversation.
even if you're creating two Facebook
Accounts to
accounts
talk to yourself.
or YouTube accounts to talk to yourself, we still like that because at least you're having conversation, even if it's to yourself. Hey, but because the
We
amount
won't
of
judge you.
energy,
We won't
yo,
judge you, right? If just like when we see someone in real life talking to himself in two
yo,
different tones of voice,
yo.
we don't judge you. We're all
What did
children of
Christ
God.
say? Love everybody, even the ones okumashori. Right? Offer to everybody.
Yes. And really, really appreciate those who have shared through super chats, the digital kava. Appreciate that, throwing that into the mix.
Yes, appreciate
Really
everyone for that.
want to say thank you to all our paying members on YouTube.
Mm,
Um, Please go if you're looking for a very exciting part one or part two of the interview and you want early access to it, please become a paying member and you get access to it. We released part one today, and then we'll probably release part two next week, and then 2 weeks later
yeah.
we'll release the first one and we'll make it out. But if you want to go and really, have a early look into that interview with David Burley, that's a way you can have early access to that, and that's another way you can contribute. I know we said this last year, but I'm more confident this year than last year. Beginning of Q1 of next year, we will have some merch. You know,
We're
when I
working
first
on it. We're
we're
working
working
on it.
on it. When I said it last year, I didn't anticipate that I would relocate to Las Vegas,
Mm.
and and I
And
also
have a
didn't.
new child. You got baby
Yes,
number 8, so things have changed definitely.
yes, and the housing market hasn't been kind. I'm still trying to
Mm.
sell my house in Texas, so hopefully with Uncle Donald in charge, the economy picks up. Can
Come
sell
on,
my house.
pal. Drop the interest rates.
Yeah,
Come on,
drop the interest
pal.
rates, man.
Shit.
I need someone to buy my house. Um, but I'm fairly confident by the end of Q1 of next year, we'll at least have T-shirts,
Mm,
and we'll make those available. And with that, I think that's all the housekeeping. Please
okay.
like, subscribe, share. We're on all the major platforms for social media: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. And then also, for audio podcasts, we had a great year on Spotify and
Mm,
on Apple. And so we don't really track Amazon and Audible and iHeartRadio, but I'm assuming just looking at the growth and the interactions on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts that we're probably doing well on the other platforms. But really, it all boils down to thank you to all the viewers and the listeners. And Mr. Ateroa, you want to close us out for this live?
yes, yes. And I just want to maybe kind of add on to what you're saying, Tua. I think Auckland, New Zealand is still our number one city.
Yes,
So thank you for all our Auckland listeners for holding down the fort, and new Auckland listeners on there. And but by country, I think the US of A is still our number one by country. So
yes.
USA holding it
Australia
down.
is doing really good on Spotify. Australia on Spotify. I think that's where Australia is leading, is on the
Yes,
Spotify streams and
Spotify.
downloads.
Okay. So love, thank you to our Australian followers, Malo. But I just thought I'd just share that. But the three questions we always leave with everyone. Well, first, happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone. I really do hope you guys have a prosperous um, New Year that's coming along, and have a merriest Christmas with you and your families wherever you may be. And like we end with every live digital Gava session on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. Um, be bold, ask the hard questions, and stay curious. Ofatu, until next time.
Mahalo. Bye.